Welcome back to the Make Time for Success podcast. This is episode number 121. If you're wondering how to maximize your performance, whether it's at home or at work, in your social life, or with just plain old regular decision making, you're going to want to learn from my special guest, Jennifer Finley, who is an expert in guiding others to do just this type of excellent mental performance work. Jen is trained in multiple coaching methodologies and holds 2 certifications in Neuro-Linguistic Programming. She's also a certified trainer in yoga, mindfulness, and meditation. She was a leadership coach at Lululemon. She is a Reiki Master and has apprenticed for many years with master healers, learning the art of intuition, energy healing, and psychic reading. She currently is co-hosting the Mind Your Business podcast with her partner, James Wedmore. She is the head coach of James's Performance Mastermind and co-leads a premier leadership program with James called Indispensable Leadership Academy. James has called her Team Wedmore's secret weapon for her psychic insights and guidance on the business. I enjoyed not only interviewing Jen live, but also getting to re-listen to this episode so I could get a deeper sense of the insights that Jen was sharing in it. Let's go listen to this wonderful conversation together now. Hi, I'm Dr. Christine Lee, and I'm a psychologist and a procrastination coach. I've helped thousands of people move past procrastination and overwhelm so they could begin working to their potential. In this podcast, you're going to learn powerful strategies for getting your mind, body, and energy to work together so that you can focus on what's really important and accomplish the goals you want to achieve. When you start living within your full power, you're going to see how being productive can be easy and how you can create success on demand. Welcome to the Make Time for Success podcast. Hi, my friends. It's Dr. Christine Lee here again. But today is a little bit different because I have a very special guest. Her name is Jen Finley, and her skills and her being and her personality are just so special that I feel like today is a very, very special episode. She is a mindful performance coach, and she's a psychic intuitive. And I myself am curious about what those terms actually mean, what she does, how she puts her experience and training and love of all things intuition into her work. And I just want to thank you at the get-go, Jen, for being here today with me.
Oh, thank you so much, Christine. It's such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate your being here with us today. Could you share with us a few words about just who you are and how you came to be such an expert in the area of intuition and things that are really personal and so meaningful to each of us, and how you became such a wonderful teacher?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. And thank you for the compliment. So I started my journey on developing my intuition over a decade ago, but I grew up a very intuitive child in an intuitive house. So I grew up with, as I recall, my grandmother, when we were about 10 years old, I'm an identical twin. She told us the family has a gift and we can read each other's minds. And it was presented to me as a gift within the family, or because I was an identical twin, I always had that psychic link with my twin. And growing up, it was very common for us to have experiences where I'd say, did you watch this movie at 2:00 in the afternoon? Because all of a sudden the soundtrack started playing through my mind. And I thought, why is that coming into my brain? And my twin sister would say, yeah, I was home and I was watching that movie at that time. So I grew up with a very easy access to intuition, and it was always encouraged, especially by my mother. When I was 4, I lost an item and I found it. And she said, how did you find it? And I said, my angels told me where it was. And I just went right to the spot. And instead of saying, you what? She just went, oh, that's wonderful. Good. You're communicating with your guides. So it was encouraged growing up. And then when I was 23, I was teaching fitness in LA, and my father had become ill by something that was very hard for doctors to diagnose. It was something that was going on neurologically, but they couldn't pin it down. And I felt quite helpless in my capacity to help him. And I'm teaching at my fitness studio, and this beautiful woman walks in. She's about 20 years older than I am. And she has this long fairy queen like hair. And she just walks up to me, complete stranger, hugs me and whispers in my ear, "It's not your fault that your father's sick." And even to this day, as I say that, I get chills down my body. And I just burst into tears. And she just held me for a moment. And then when she left to go into the locker room to change for the class, I turned to my manager. I said, "Who was that magical woman?" And he said, "Oh, that's my best friend. She's a Reiki master and she's crazy intuitive. So she does that to people." And I just went, I want to learn everything that she has to learn. So I started taking Reiki courses with her and did my master level training with her for 4 years. And I just said, "Can I please be your apprentice? I'll trade you a Reiki healing every week if I can just sit at your feet and ask you questions." So every Monday for 4 years, I would go to her house. I would do my practice, my Reiki healing on her. And then she would just allow me to ask her anything. And I shadowed her. I participated in working with clients with her. I trained under her. And she woke me up to this world of psychic ability beyond my family, being able to sense energy, being able to tune to people, learning how to meditate, what the chakras are and where energy gets trapped, stuck, or is colliding in the body. And then after that, I just kind of went on this Renaissance journey of awakening those gifts in any way that I could. I studied NLP. She introduced me to NLP and did my first certification with her. And then I started studying the Toltec lineage. I studied under, if you've read the book, The Four Agreements, the author, Don Miguel Ruiz. Yeah. His apprentice, yes. I met when I moved back to Texas. I found a little flyer that said spoon bending class. And I looked at my mom and said, like in the Matrix where you can bend a spoon, we have to go do that. And when I went to the class, there was 40 people in a room and one woman in the center, and she was bending the prongs on a fork back with one finger. And that was like, "You're my next teacher." And that was the apprentice of Don Miguel Ruiz. So I studied with her, and I just kept anything that woke me up to this experience of things beyond the physical, of the things that are going on in the body, in the spirit, in the mind, the things that we can't touch, but we can perceive and is there. And then I did my Reiki training, my yoga training. I have over 500 hours in yoga and meditation. And I just kept finding mentors and teachers that could crack me open to that world of performance, but also intuition. And so I like to say that my specialty is in meditation, mindset, and intuition, and where those bridge together. I say mindful performance coach because I believe that performance is deeply rooted in the thoughts we think in our own mind. And that I experienced that from a young age. Actually, just this week, we did a wonderful interview on my boyfriend James's podcast, the Mind Your Business podcast, with my volleyball coach. And I was telling him that at 17, that's when I identified I can be a mental performance coach, because I discovered as an athlete, I did not have the athletic natural ability. I was too short, too scrawny, not enough natural athlete talent to be at a automatic varsity level, but my mind was fortified, and I could train my brain to focus and produce a result that multiple coaches would say, "Well, she shouldn't be able to do that, like you shouldn't be able to run that fast, and because your legs aren't long enough," or whatever it is. And so I started playing with this idea of, can you enhance performance by the way that you think and by meditation? And my high school volleyball team is where I began to apply that really steadily at 17. And it just became a passion, and truly a passionate obsession of mine. I am obsessed with what makes the mind work. How do you enhance someone's ability to perform in all arenas through meditation, mindfulness, and intuition? And then began applying that throughout my career in sports, in yoga. I used to work with young athletes. I spent over a decade working for Lululemon. I was a performance coach inside of Lululemon. I led teams as a manager inside of Lululemon and was always interested in how do we get the team dynamic to function at its highest capacity by mental performance. And really just cultivated this interest in developing your relationship to self, but also your relationship to everything that we can't see that's out there guiding us.
Okay. Thank you so much for that wonderful, I think,
long-winded answer.
I'm thinking mini biography, because I'm sure there's so many different experiences that you skipped over in telling us the highlights, but really also managing to give us a really good sense of your own journey through exploring all of this and checking in with yourself and saying, oh, this is actually what I'm super interested in and I understand well. So let me use my interests to guide my journey forward. And you did that from a very young age.
Yes. As we were talking to my coach, what I was telling him back when I was 15, 16 was I saw that I could be of value to others to support them. One of my close friends in high school was a junior Olympic athlete, an incredible volleyball player. To this day, when she goes back to visit our high school, people whisper her name in the hallway. Oh, there's Michael. There's Michael. And she and I bonded because she was a freshman and I was a senior, and she had all this psychological pressure on her. And the psychological pressure would affect the physical performance. And I saw that I could support her in keeping her focused. And that reward of being able to, I can help someone focus in their brain to produce the performance that they're capable of. And I think everyone can relate to having moments in their life where you know that you are capable of a badass, amazing performance. And then something psychologically happens, whether it be stage fright or pressure or anticipation or just perception, worrying about what people will think. And you walk off the stage or away from that performance and you think, I didn't deliver at my best. And I saw that I could be that Dumbo's feather effect for people where I can support them in, let's make sure that in your mind, you are producing the best possible outcome for what you're capable of.
That's a wonderful skill. And I love that you get so much joy out of.
Oh, yes. Can you tell?
I've also been at conferences where you have hosted meditations and discussions where really you're lifting whole rooms at a time and inspiring people to really go back, go deep, go into where their greatest potential sits. And the first time I witnessed this with you on stage, it's really mind-bending, mind-blowing, because you feel like you're being transported somewhere. I will just share my own experience, and that there's something really, yeah. And I think there's something really special going on as a community when you're doing this kind of work together, but also within yourself, that you don't really have to stay at a certain level of performance. You can always elevate, I think. And that's what I'm learning from you. And, Jen mentioned James. James is James Wedmore, who happens to be my coach and Jen's partner in crime and partner in life and in podcasting. Yes. So may I ask the 20 or so questions that I have just about your mini biography now? Let's talk about the twin element, if you don't mind, because I know you're a twin, but I don't think I know much more about the special energy that you might have just been born with because of your status as an identical twin. Could you talk a little bit about what you feel you understand about that?
You know, I was really fascinated with this in college of going, are all twins psychic? Are they all linked? And every time I meet a twin, and it's funny, James is a twin magnet. He attracts so many twins. Our podcast editor is a twin. His executive assistant is a twin. His best friend is a twin. And so whenever I get with the twins, one of them will compare notes of, do you find that this happens? And it's phenomenal. Most twins, in my experience, had life experiences where they can feel their brother's physical pain. Like our podcast editor was telling me an experience where his brother was injured and he could feel his pain in a different city and physically in his body. And my sister and I, our personalities are quite different from one another. But we have the ability to tap into each other, and I receive her emotions a lot. So if I have a random emotional day, I'll check in with her and say, is there anything going on with you? Because today I am just feeling so emotional. And whatever emotion is random for me, be it sadness or disappointment or frustration, every time it's like, yeah, that's Jillian. I'm just feeling for her. So there is a link in that way. And I think that some of the challenge comes with being a twin is that people naturally group you together. They refer to you as the twins, and sometimes people, even at when we were in college, I was surprised that people treat you, oh, I wish I had a twin. I would get so much done if I had a twin. And Jillian and I would go, it's not a clone. It's just like having a sibling that was born at the same time as you. You can have diverse interests. You can have very dynamic personality traits, but she and I complement each other in so many ways. And the way that we can bounce ideas off of each other, if you watch her, she's a very highly creative. She's a writer, a screenwriter. She writes some of our copy for us. And if you watch us in an idea meeting, we'll be finishing each other's thoughts, sentences, and ideas without knowing that we are. And then James will be like, are you watching this? This is fascinating, because she'll start a sentence and then I'll finish it. And she'll be like, yep, that's what I was thinking. Okay. And what about that? And it'll feel like to the outsider that it would sound like she's not completing a thought, but I'm getting everything that is coming through her. So yeah, I think that being a twin primed me for understanding how to unlock intuition. And I say unlock because my experience until I was in my 20s of intuition was that it really resided within my family. And then I had to learn how to push it beyond myself and tune into others. And so I conditioned myself. It was with meditation and silence and these different little exercises that I cultivated. And now I teach often of how do you dial up intuition, but having that foundation of this is real with my sister. And we would do thought experiments on each other where she'd go, okay, I'm thinking of something really, really random. So I want you to tell me what I'm thinking of. And the night that I said, you're thinking of a pink tiger standing on top of a white ball in a blue room, and I just completely creeped her out, she was like, no, stop it. So, yeah, I think that being a twin can set you up to believe in intuition, which I think is foundational for if you want to awaken it. There's so many people that are like, well, I wish that was real, but I'm just not sure if I believe. And I truly believe that that's foundational to stretch anything. You have to believe that it's real, because if you're operating inside of that's a fantasy land, then it'll be very hard to condition it and to exercise. And I think intuition's like a muscle. I think everyone has it. We've just learned not to use it. And some people's intuition has atrophied, and we've got to get back in that intuition gym and learn how to condition it and reward it and cultivate it. And then everyone can awaken their ability to be psychically intuitive.
As you were talking about you and your twin and the special energy and understanding you have between each other, my thought went to being a psychologist, therapist, and my relationship with my clients, and or just people's relationship with each other. Just any two random strangers can potentially have a deep level understanding of how each other works. Maybe not instantaneously, but sometimes people have that with each other, and that there is some sort of process through development or through societal training where this stuff, where this awareness gets shut down or suppressed or maybe made fun of or pushed aside. And that's why I wanted to ask about your Renaissance and what had happened before the Renaissance, that you had to kind of maybe like keep it private or just ignore it or devalue it, rather than say like, this is what I'm digging deep into. I'm relying on this all the time. And this is my best this is my best compass that I have.
Yes, it's your secret weapon when you start to develop it. Yeah. I think in my 20s, when I was just learning to awaken intuition, I had a fear that if I opened the door, something dark would come in. And that's a valid fear, because my experience with energy is that there is light and dark, and Harry Potter's real. There's Slytherin magic out there. So one of the things that my teacher, I was very blessed to study with someone who is skilled and prepared in, let me teach you how to have spiritual boundaries and how to sense what's dark, what's light, and how to be clear in your communication. I'm communicating with the light. And that's been validated by every spiritual teacher that I've had after meeting her. Even we work with a shaman now, and he'll say, I only work in the light and I'm clear. I work with the benevolent ones, is what he'll say. So the way that I tuned to that when I was learning was to let my sensation in my heart guide me of to ask, I would like to communicate with the light. I want to communicate with this specific guide. For me, I grew up with a Christian background, so the archangels always felt like a very safe connection to me. I want to connect with Angel Gabriel, and I would ask myself for protection. And at one point, I used to do psychic readings for others, and I stopped doing that because now I find so much more joy and benefit in teaching people how to read themselves, essentially. Because anytime you're going to a reader, you're running the risk that they're misinterpreting the data that they're receiving about you. We all have brains, and we're as you receive pictures, images, sounds, information, the reader has the capacity to then form an opinion, a judgment, an assessment, and then communicate that in a way that maybe isn't as clear as it would be to you. So now I'm interested more in teaching people what I did to access my intuition. And one of the things that I did was I paid attention to the moments where I didn't listen. I can remember one specific instance where I heard a voice behind my left ear, just clear as a bell, don't wear that today. And I was putting on a ring at the time, and it was a ring that I wore every day that my mother gave me. And I thought, that's so funny. Was that a very neurotic thought? Is my thinking brain just worried that something's going to happen in this ring? And I just shoved it off and went about my day. And it was such a random, whoa, plot twist moment, because I was on my way to work. When I got to work, I was in Australia. I found out it was a bank holiday, which I didn't even know what that was, but you don't go to work on bank holidays in Australia. And my friends and I randomly decided, let's just go cliff jumping. So we went to a waterfall, and we're out there sliding down a waterfall. And as I'm playing around in this waterfall, my ring fell off my finger and falls into this pool of water, gone forever, just gone, lost in the Australian rainforest. And at first I have this heartbreak moment of, I've just lost this precious gift that my mother gave to me. And then I remember, don't wear the ring today. And I became fascinated by that, that's a gift. When you can look back on some part of me new, and you ask yourself, what part of me, how did I receive that? What's so intriguing about intuition is we all receive it in a different way. I like to think of it like love languages. Everyone, if you've read the book, The 5 Love Languages, which I love, everyone has every love language. It's not like there's people floating around out there that's like, I hate gifts. Do not buy me. Well, maybe there is, but most people are like, well, that's not my primary, but I'll receive it. And I think that that's the way intuition works. Is there's the clairs, which is clairvoyant, is being able to see, clairaudient, being able to hear, clairsentient, being able to feel, and claircognizant, being able to know. And then there's these fun ones that are clairgustatory and clair olfactory, which is being able to taste or smell. Those are more rare. The primary are the first four that I listed. And I found that for me, the first one that woke up was clairaudient. And as I started to realize that, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been receiving messages in my left ear since I was 4. If I ask a question, I hear the answer. And so I started conditioning that. and I would do these little experiments where I'd, get in my car and just go, I want to be guided by my intuition. Where do I need to go? I want to talk to the light. I want to talk to my angels. And then I would listen, and whatever they would say, I would take a direction. And I've told this story on James's podcast before. So if you've listened to both episodes, you'll hear it again. But when I was doing these experiments of, I'm going to condition my intuition, I really want to learn how to be clairaudient. This one day I'd come home from Australia and I was like, I'm just going to spend a whole hour driving around being guided by my guides. And I would hear, turn left, turn right. There's a bookstore. You're looking for a bookstore. And I was following these directions in my hometown going, what? There's not a bookstore up here. I know this road. I know where I'm just going to, and then pull over and I see a Goodwill. And I'm like, Goodwill? Does Goodwill, they have books? I think they have books. Go in, turn left. And I turn left and I see this bookshelf. And Christine, it was like in the movie where they put a spotlight. There was this sunbeam coming in, beaming this spine of a book. And it says Rare Birds of Australia. And I pull it out and it's $2. And two of my friends in Australia were getting married. They're park rangers. So I'm like, this is perfect wedding gift. I'm going to package this up and mail it off. It takes forever for it to get there because I mailed it snail mail. And a month later, the wife reaches out to me and says, how did you know? Where did you find that book? And I said, it was so random. I was just being guided. I went into a Goodwill in Texas. And she said, that is a rare edition, out of print, bird field guide that my husband takes with him anytime he goes into the rainforest. And he's said for years that he wants a copy that's new just to put on the coffee table. I just got chills. And we've never been able to find one because they don't make that book anymore. I can't believe you found that book. And that was like those confirmation moments. And when I say I get chills, that's a clairsentient signal for those of you out there who are like, oh yeah, I get a feeling in my gut. Or like you touch your chest, like I can feel that. I feel pressure in my chest. Or for me, when I say something that's true, all the hairs on my arm stand up and I get rolling chills. And the more true it is, the stronger it is. So James will test in, something that nobody knows, like what killed the dinosaurs. And he'll ask me and then he'll run through answers and I'll be like, rolling chills, rolling chills, rolling chills. And that's my signal of like, that's the truth. So I think that experimentation was the awakening was I'm going to see how psychic I can become. And my teacher was just so naturally that way. Like she didn't learn how to just walk up to a stranger and know what's going on with them in their life. She just came in that way. And she was part of 5 generations of women. They were all different healing modalities, but her mom was an astrologer and everyone in that line had that capacity. And she would say, well, you got to meditate and open your third eye. And I'd be like, oh, okay, well, but how do you like, surely you can work this out. Surely you can do exercises to condition it. And that's when I became just experimenting with myself and then teaching it. And to your point of what you said of this isn't broadly accepted in mainstream society. What I've learned is that the things that awaken intuition, silence, meditation, paying attention to your own body. And that's not easily accessible in our modern day because where do you go in your day where there isn't music playing these days or there isn't noise? And intuition speaks in a whisper. It isn't a huge, loud bang on the top of your head or like in a Looney Tunes, the anvil falls from the sky and that's how you know the road's blocked. It's quiet. So you have to quiet yourself. And when we live in a society where there's so much chatter in the mind and external chatter around us, music, talking, loud noises, and then we really reward in our society not being still. Busy, busy, busy. You've got to always have something to do, always be in motion, moving. And that's where yoga expanded my intuition again, because I learned the value of stillness and that when you hold the body still, you can actually tell what's going on in the body. And as long as you're moving it all the time, it can be difficult to identify what the body's trying to tell you. And I believe the body's the subconscious mind. So I think that everyone has access to all of these levels of intuition and clairs, but you find the one that's speaking the loudest. And as you turn up the volume on that, then you'll start to unlock and awaken the others. And the more still and silent and paying attention you become, the more you reward it versus going, that's weird. Why did that happen? When you say, yes, thank you, keep talking to me, tell me more. That's like any conversation, the universe begins to lean in. Oh, you're listening now? I have so much more to tell you.
On that note, let me ask you what your thoughts are about anxiety, because we can have goosebumps of all kinds, right? And I guess because of my profession and my experience working with people, the overwhelming presence of anxiety, worry, specific worry, general worry, catastrophic worry, consuming worry, distracting worry, all the different levels and types. I've always wondered, how come people gravitate towards that rather than towards something like intuition and having a more playful, fluid system to put your thoughts through and put your situations through, because they're both systems of evaluation, I think. So what are your thoughts about the anxiety piece for people?
Well, there's a few pieces to that. One, have you ever read Many Lives, Many Masters? It's written by an MIT psychologist, fascinating book. And he speaks a lot on, now he used to be completely science-based, didn't believe in any of this woo-woo stuff until he had a patient that no one could cure. And as he started doing hypnosis on her, she was going into past life regression. And so him and his wife started studying this phenomena of, is the anxiety arising from this lifetime or from something that you brought in with you? So I think there's a real tangible element, intangible element perhaps, to there could be anxiety arising around something that you've carried in, either from your ancestors or from something unresolved in a past life. I truly believe in that. Like my mom always jokes with us, our family's Native American, and my great, great, great grandmother walked the Trail of Tears. And anytime I've always said, how come I have had to resolve it? It feels much more resolved than it did in my early 20s. But in my early 20s, I was always scared of abandonment, like that whatever I had was going to leave me abruptly. And I would say to my mom, this makes no sense. I had such a structured, balanced, protective upbringing where it was very stable and very, like trauma with a little T, not a big T, no big childhood trauma. And she would say, well, honey, in our bloodline, look at the Native American Indians, you're going to naturally have a sense of distrust, a sense of abandonment, a fear of your culture, your home being ripped away. That's just in your blood. And I think that they're proving that more and more with science, that trauma can be hereditary, that you can bring that in from what's in the past. But I think that one of the things that stands out to me about anxiety is that I think anxiety for a lot of people is connected to our human desire to control the future. And when you want to control the future, but you can't, it can naturally produce this apprehension, tension, or anxious feeling. And what I've learned to lean into around intuition is that sometimes the path that the universe is guiding you towards, or that you're being set on, if you saw all the things you have to go through in order to get to that path, you would be like, opt out. I don't think so. Because who's going to sign up for a painful journey? But if you're constantly pulling in from the universe, I want what's best for me, I want to be connected to my highest good, then things will unfold in your favor, and it might involve some obstacles. Like there's a saying in yoga, the mountaineer needs the mountain. You can't be a mountaineer unless you learn to climb a mountain. But none of us would sign up for, yes, I would like to climb over the hardest possible peak in my life. And so the anxiety can arise from this need to control the future in some capacity. Like I want this outcome, but I also want to control the path in which it takes to get there. Or people are anxious because it looks like things aren't going in the direction of the outcome that they want. And so they think, oh, that means my outcome's not going to happen, or I'm not going to reach that destination. And that makes them feel anxious. When in reality, and actually, my boyfriend James and I are a great example of this, because our love story is so winding that if you would have told me when I met him when I was 20, I truly believed that's my person. And if you would have told me it's going to take it's going to take about 2 decades for the two of you to come back together in a way that's meaningful and lasting. But throughout those 2 decades, you'll enter and exit each other's lives in significant ways. And you'll cultivate this partnership in development that's going to be for your highest growth. And then at the end of that, you're talking to a 20-year-old. At the end of that, when you're almost 40, you're going to reconnect and fall in love. I would have been like, what? No, I do not want to sign up for that program. And that would have given me a lot of anxiety. But when you start to tune into, I want what's best for me, and it's a trust fall into the universe. And that's where I think real anxiety, the other side of anxiety, is some version of peace. And that comes from trust. And so I think intuition can support you in learning to trust your own self, of even though this looks bad, even though it looks like things aren't working out, I know things always work out for me. And I know things must be conspiring in my favor. And that can ease the anxiety because you just know it ends well. My sister, when we were younger, she struggled with anxiety, and she would always say, you are just offensively calm in these situations. We were late to a plane ride one time, and the taxi was late picking us up, and she was so worried we were going to miss the flight. And I was just, oh, well, we're in the cab now. We're on our way. And she looked at me and said, you are shockingly cavalier about this. If we miss this flight, we are going to be in big trouble. And I said, we're not going to miss it, because we're just going to cause that we'll make it. And I think that that's something that you're not on a track like a train in your life where it's, I don't believe in that sense of fate of like, no matter what you do, you're doomed. And that to me produces anxiety of like, you can't get out. It's headed for a crash. I think that we are magnets for, we're electrical beings. We can shift and mold our reality based on our emotions, our thoughts, our focus, our intent. And so as you begin to cultivate and hone that, this is the law of attraction. There's so many ontological laws that you can work with: the law of integrity, the law of attraction, the law of that the universe hates a vacuum. So if you create a space, something has to fill it. That's a law that we see over and over in science. And so these experiences that we have that seem like we're off track, or it seems like the future's not how we want, that produces anxiety. Because I think you can tell me as a psychologist, I believe anxiety is always rooted in the future. It's anxious thinking about something that hasn't happened yet. And the beautiful thing about what hasn't happened yet is it's mutable. It's responding to you on a minute by minute basis. There's actually a really cool movie called The Adjustment Bureau, where they have a concept in the movie that every time the character takes a choice, it creates these ripples that go throughout everyone else's choices. And they show it like a map in the movie. And I think that's such a cool representation of the law of attraction, that we're always navigating our life, but where your mind is at in the present is also controlling the future. And the paradox about worry and anxiety is that anytime you're in worry, you're in a form of fear. And when you're in a form of fear, you're thinking about a future that you do not want to create. So actually, the surest way to produce that future would be to remain in that worry and anxiety and fear. And so one of the best, most healthy things you can do is to allow yourself to produce some sort of habit or practice that reduces the anxiety. For me, that was yoga, because the practice of yoga, beyond what we do in the West, like I'm not talking about hot yoga where you're just there to sweat and tone your arms and get a great ab workout. I'm talking about like the asana practice, the way it's designed, is designed to place your body in an uncomfortable position and to exert effort, but to also find the ease. And there's this challenge of, can I be exerting discipline, effort, and heat, but also find the stillness, the cool, the peace, and the ease in the pose? And it's challenging. And as you learn to do that, you can literally train your mind and your body to be comfortable in uncomfortable positions. And then that ripples into the way that you approach a lack of control in your life, where you start to just lean in and go, I can breathe through that. I can cause the outcome that I want.
That is a wonderful explanation of anxiety and how it functions. So thank you. I've done my own mini explanations in the past, just from, not from training, but really from observation from within myself, and how I tend to use anxiety and try to cope with it, and also the experiences of my clients. And I love how you also bring in the other side, which is the ability to say, I trust either the situation, the potential future, and or myself. And that all of those things, I feel like trust is the most complex, wonderful word and concept, but people really have difficulty getting to that point to say, you know what, I'm going to opt to trust that things are going to work out in my favor, or even just work out. And
or
the other option is anxiety.
Something that's coming to me now is that sometimes you can use anxiety as there's an alarm bell going off. You know, I've actually, my journey into being able to trust myself came from the most painful experience of my life, where I was forced to make a decision, an important decision. And I made a decision that was best for what I thought everyone else thought, or I was externally looking for, like, what's the right path. And I got to figure it out externally, outside of myself, not internally. And internally, I felt an extraordinary amount of anxiety around what I thought I was going to choose. And then because when I chose wrong, it rippled actually into, I would label it a trauma, because I not only did the choice that I made not align with what I wanted, it also made me question my whole self of, like, am I not capable of making a choice that leads me in the right direction? And I think all of us can look back in our lives where there's times in life where you literally have a fork in the road and you have to choose. You know, as a young adult, that could be, what college am I going to go to? Or, like I was just talking to my volleyball coach. I was asked to play college volleyball, and my doctor also told me, if you continue to play, you're going to ruin your shoulder. So it's surgery, or you can keep playing. And I chose, I'm not going to play anymore. So those are big choices that we have. And that example is a little choice, but people are faced with choices that sometimes are literally life and death. Like, I remember my mom having to choose, what path are we going to take to treat my father's cancer? And she had a lot of anxiety around what path. And the anxiety was coming from, I don't know the right answer yet, or I'm about to choose the wrong thing. And she said she prayed for guidance. She's very spiritual and rooted in her Christian faith. And she prayed for guidance, and then woke up in the middle of the night, and there was a beam of light in the hotel room. And she was like, this was so bizarre because the windows were shut. There was no way that light could get into this room, but the beam of light was pointing in a direction. And I said, I don't know what direction that is, but that's the direction of his healing. And they had to choose between two doctors. And when my dad woke up, she said, what doctor is in that direction? And it was pointing due north. And he was like, that's exactly where this clinic is located. And she said, that's the one. And he was healed of his cancer. He had a 20 or 30% survival rate. Like he said, when he went to see doctors, they were giving him the go fishing speech, is what he called it. Like, just enjoy the time you have left. And there was one doctor that said, I can cure this. And they cured it. He's been in remission for 25 years, and my mom credits that moment of, there was anxiety of, what do we choose? What do we do? And then as you lean towards this A-B choice, when I lean into A, do I feel more anxiety or less? And I've experienced that of, like, to use your anxiety as a barometer to tell yourself, maybe that's a clue in your body. Like, when I was considering moving to Australia, I was also up for this big promotion that I had been working for 5 years. It was like, all I wanted in my career was this promotion. And finally, I was getting an interview. And then I had gone to visit Australia, and there was this other part of me that was like, oh, but wouldn't it be nice to go live in Australia? And my best friend at the time was Australian. And I get this phone call you're finally going to get an interview. The founder of the company's flying down to interview you. And I said to my best friend, Nikki, well, I'm not moving to Australia then, because I'm going to get this role. I know I am. And then I would start to hyperventilate, which is a symptom of anxiety. A lot of people that have anxiety, their breath shortens. They cannot breathe. And those two are paired together. If you think of that, that's how the mind, the emotions, and the body are all one. So the body starts to react with short breath. And I told her, I don't know why, but when I think about this promotion, I can't breathe. And when I say I'm going to live in Australia, I can take a deep breath. And she said, well, maybe that's your clue. And that was one of the first times where I had experienced this pressure of you've got to me at that time. Now, looking back as an adult, maybe this wasn't true. It was what I was saying to myself, but you never know. Maybe it was. There was a window of opportunity in which that was my one and only chance to go live abroad in Australia. And that window was going to close. And if I didn't take that window, I'm getting chills, then it was going to shift the trajectory of my life. And I chose Australia and then had one of the most amazing years of my entire life living there and awakening my intuitive gifts even more and just experiencing that sense of being separate from my twin. So as an identical twin, one of the things that can happen is you're used to making decisions together because it's where are we going and what do you want to do? And I just want to be with you. So what do you want? And I'll do that. And to be in a foreign country where I didn't have access to that anymore and I had to choose, what am I doing? What do I want? That developed myself. And as I started to hone in on, I can make choices and I can be forced with a difficult decision where it is either or. And sometimes James is great at saying, why does it have to be either or? Let's find a way to create an and. And I love that. And there's choices in life sometimes where you do have to choose. It's this doctor or that doctor. It's this job or that job. It's this relationship or that relationship. It's this city to live in or that city to live in. And you have to make a choice. And when you can trust yourself that I made a choice and it worked out for my highest good, and I feel good about it. It benefited me. It moved me forward on my path. There were so many gifts for me within that, rather than saying I was forced to choose and I chose the wrong. You chose poorly. Like it's that Indiana Jones moment where you have to choose one cup to drink out of it, then you die. People relate to choices like that it's going to kill you if you choose the wrong thing. And what I encourage people to do is, in those moments where you realize you've chosen the wrong thing, can you look backwards in retrospective and identify some part of you that knew that was the wrong choice? And sometimes that might be anxiety. It might be that you couldn't breathe, that you were having panic attacks, that you couldn't sleep at night when you thought about that, or that you heard, don't do that, don't do that. And so we joke that anytime I experience anxiety, that's the boulder. The universe threw a pebble. I received a sign. I got a dream. I saw a vision. I heard a voice, but I didn't pay attention. And then it throws the boulder at me so that I go, now I'm hyperventilating and I need to choose differently. So it can work in both ways, to trust no matter what, the universe allows U-turns. So even if you mess it up with your decision, you can come on back the other way, but learn from it and extract what you need to know about yourself, about the way you make decisions, because you make decisions in a way that other people don't. And I've had to learn that my sister and James, they are some of the most decisive people. They know right away if they like it or not. And James does this inner barometer of, is it a 9 or a 10, 9 or a 10 for me on a scale of 1 to 10? Do I want to do that at a level 9 or 10? Then I'm going to do it. And when he started coaching me in that, I had a lot of trouble going, oh, I don't know. I think it's like an 8.5. How do you know that it's a 9? And he was like, it's just it's a feeling. I can feel it. It's a 9. And I'm like, I don't know that I feel it at a 9. How do I know what a 9 feels like? But I've learned that I receive, is that the right path, in a different way. And I think people should explore that, reward it, and then don't beat yourself up when you make the wrong decision. That's just going to be information on how to hone your intuition.
I would just add one piece that's coming through my mind, which is that decision-making does not actually have to be heavy, that you could choose to have kind of a playful, experimental, sprite-ish kind of attitude towards it. Like, well, if we really don't know, what would we want? And I'm reminded of how I asked you to be on this podcast. Even, I don't know if you remember, you had just spoken on the stage. I was completely wowed and transformed. And I kind of leapt to ask you to be on, not knowing what would we talk about or if you would want to be on the show. But that's the spirit with which I'm describing this piece, that you could just say, let's go. Let's just see if this could work out.
It reminds me of that quote, like you take the next step, and then from there you'll see more. Go as far as you can see, and then from there you'll see more. And don't you think that if you were able to make decisions in a lighthearted, fun, whimsical way that was, we're in this big mystery, let's find out, you would also have to be operating from a space of, we're working with a net, everything works out. So you're not plummeting to your death. You're going to be caught in some way. If it works out, it works out. And if it doesn't work out, it still works out. You have to operate from that capacity in order to risk. You have to trust.
I think that is a very beautiful place to wrap up. And I want to thank you from me, because I found myself going through my own biography to just say, what were those moments that were so hard that I was scared, like it was life or death? What are the moments that really were the forks in the road? And what were the times that really showed me that there are so many different alert systems that I have access to in myself if I just allow them to be heard, if I allow myself to see and believe in them. And this has been so much fun and so inspirational. And I think there are a lot of clues. If you, dear listener, go through and replay perhaps and listen to this again, you're going to hear a lot of different strategies actually and tips for using your own current circumstances and your own senses to make stronger decisions and to reduce your anxiety on the whole and trust yourself on a deeper level. So Jen, thank you for being this guide for us today and for others throughout your life.
For hours, the time zooms by.
We could. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us. I appreciate you so much. Could you share with us how we might stay in touch with you? And do you want to talk about the podcast a bit as well?
Sure. Yes. So I am James's co-host on the Mind Your Business podcast. If you're in James's world, you can find me. I frequently lead group meditations at his events. That's something that we've colored in because that's my repertoire and forte. And as Christine said, when you said like you're transported in those moments where you're in a group, I think that what happens scientifically, and this has been proven, is when you're in a group of people and you're breathing together, what happens is when you sync the breath, your heart sync. And when the rhythm of the heart syncs, it actually does produce this magnetic field around you. And this is science, y'all. This has been proven. And so when you are at these live events and we do those breath meditations, there's always a pranayama yogic breath sneaky little thing that I've slipped in there. It always has roots in yoga. Even if people aren't aware that they're doing a yogic breath, that's what we're doing together as a group over a span of 5 to 10 minutes. That elevates the room in a way that you're able to access things that maybe you wouldn't. And I think that there's a lot of value in the community like that. So you can find me at any of James's events, and especially our live events this year. Very exciting. We've got some things planned around meditative practices and experiences for people. And you can find me on the Instagrams. My handle is, well, if you follow James, you'll find me very easily, but my handle is JEUNEJENNI. It's a little French.
Wonderful.
And yeah, that's the easiest. If you're in James's world, you're in mine. And that's the easiest way to access anything that I'm offering is to come into his world.
Yes, I want to give another shout out for the podcast, the Mind Your Business podcast, which was the way that I got into James's world and wonderful community, found a good 3/4 of my guests on my own podcast. And it's a wonderful podcast filled with information about intuition, about decision-making, about high performance and business success as well. So it's a wonderful show. James is an incredibly talented host. And Jen, good luck to you on the podcast in the future and in your work helping the people that you do in this most beautiful way. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
All right, everyone, it's a wrap for this very special episode. And I want to thank you for being here. And thanks for listening to this wonderful chat. I will see you next Thursday when the next episode drops. Take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make Time for Success podcast. If you enjoyed what you've heard, You can subscribe to make sure you get notified of upcoming episodes. You can also visit our website, maketimeforsuccesspodcast.com, for past episodes, show notes, and all the resources we mention on the show. Feel free to connect with me over on Instagram too. You can find me there under the name Procrastination Coach. Send me a DM and let me know what your thoughts are about the episodes you've been listening to. And let me know any topics that you might like me to talk about on the show. I'd love to hear all about how you're making time for success. Talk to you soon.